Imagine walking through your daily life, making decision after decision, without ever realizing that your brain is secretly working against you. It's a disturbing thought, isn't it? Most of us like to think that we're in control, that we're the ones calling the shots. But what if I told you that's not always the case? In fact, research suggests that our brains are wired to make decisions based on mental shortcuts and biases, rather than objective reality. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people tend to overestimate the importance of their own thoughts and feelings, while underestimating the influence of external factors. This is known as the introspection illusion, and it's just one of the many cognitive biases that can lead us astray. Dr. Emily Pronine, a psychologist at Stanford University, has spent years studying this phenomenon, and her findings are nothing short of astonishing. It turns out that our brains are wired to prioritize self-serving narratives, even when they're completely at odds with reality. This raises a chilling question. How many of our decisions are based on faulty assumptions, rather than objective facts? The answer, it turns out, is a lot more than we'd like to admit. A study conducted by Dr. Daniel Kahneman, a Nobel laureate in economics, found that people tend to rely on mental shortcuts, such as the availability heuristic, when making decisions. This means that we tend to overestimate the importance of vivid, memorable events, while underestimating the importance of more mundane, everyday experiences. For example, if you've recently been in a car accident, you may overestimate the risk of driving, even if the statistics suggest that it's still a relatively safe activity. This bias can lead to all sorts of poor decision-making, from investing in the stock market to choosing a romantic partner. And it's not just limited to big, life-changing decisions. Cognitive biases can influence everything from what we eat for breakfast to how we vote in elections. Dr. Kahneman's research, which was conducted in collaboration with Dr. Amos Tversky, a psychologist at the University of British Columbia, has been widely acclaimed for its insights into human decision-making. But what's even more fascinating is the way that these biases can be manipulated by external factors, such as advertising and social media. A study published in the Journal of Consumer Research found that people who are exposed to persuasive messaging are more likely to make impulsive purchases, even if they know that the product is not in their best interests. As we navigate our daily lives, it's essential to recognize the ways in which cognitive biases are influencing our decisions. One of the most common biases is the confirmation bias, which refers to our tendency to seek out information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs. This can lead to a kind of intellectual tunnel vision, where we become so focused on our own perspectives that we neglect to consider alternative viewpoints. Dr. Peter Wason, a psychologist at University College London, conducted a classic study on this phenomenon, where he asked participants to test a hypothesis by seeking out evidence that either confirmed or disconfirmed it. What he found was that people tend to seek out evidence that confirms their hypothesis, rather than trying to disprove it. This can lead to all sorts of problems, from misdiagnosing medical conditions to making poor investment decisions. And yet, despite the potential risks, we continue to rely on mental shortcuts and biases to guide our decision-making. It's as if we're driving through life with a faulty GPS system, constantly getting lost in a sea of misinformation and confusion. But why do we do this? Why do we rely on cognitive biases, even when we know that they can lead to poor decision-making? One reason is that mental shortcuts are often faster and more efficient than careful, deliberate reasoning. When we're faced with a complex decision, it's often easier to rely on a rule of thumb or a mental heuristic, rather than taking the time to weigh all the options carefully. This can be especially true in situations where we're under time pressure or feeling stressed. Dr. Keith Stanovich, a psychologist at the University of Toronto, has written extensively on this topic, and his research suggests that people who are more intelligent and reflective are actually less susceptible to cognitive biases. This is because they're more likely to engage in metacognition or thinking about their own thought processes, which can help to counteract the influence of biases. However, even the most intelligent and reflective among us can fall prey to cognitive biases, especially when we're not aware of them. And that's the key, awareness. By recognizing the ways in which cognitive biases are influencing our decisions, we can begin to take steps to mitigate their effects. As we delve deeper into the world of cognitive biases, it becomes clear that our brains are constantly playing tricks on us. We're like magicians, conjuring up illusions and deceptions that can lead us down the wrong path. But what if we could learn to recognize these tricks, to see through the smoke and mirrors of our own minds? What if we could develop a kind of mental immunity, a way of protecting ourselves from the influences of cognitive biases? It's a fascinating prospect, and one that researchers are only just beginning to explore. Dr. Timothy Wilson, a psychologist at the University of Virginia, has conducted extensive research on the topic of mental immunity, and his findings suggest that it's possible to develop a kind of cognitive inoculation, a way of protecting ourselves from the influences of biases and misinformation. But how do we do this? How do we develop the kind of mental awareness and discernment that can help us navigate the complex world of cognitive biases? That's a question that we'll continue to explore as we examine the ways in which our brains can deceive us and the strategies that we can use to overcome these deceptions. And as we consider the various ways in which cognitive biases can influence our decisions, it becomes clear that the answer is not a simple one, but rather a complex interplay of factors, including our thoughts, feelings, and experiences, all of which can contribute to a kind of cognitive landscape that is constantly shifting and evolving. And it's within this landscape that we must learn to navigate, to find our way through the twists and turns of our own minds, and to make decisions that are based on reality rather than illusion. And it's this journey that we'll continue to explore as we delve deeper into the world of cognitive biases and the ways in which they can both help and hinder us. And it's a journey that will take us to the very limits of human knowledge and understanding and beyond, into the uncharted territories of the human mind, where the boundaries between reality and illusion are constantly blurred, and where the truth is always hiding, waiting to be discovered. And it's this discovery that we'll continue to pursue as we explore the fascinating world of cognitive biases and the many ways in which they can deceive us and lead us astray. And it's within this world that we must learn to navigate, to find our way through the complex web of influences and biases that shape our decisions and our lives. And it's this navigation that will require all of our skills and resources as we strive to make sense of the world around us and to make decisions that are based on reality rather than illusion. And it's this reality that we'll continue to explore as we delve deeper into the world of cognitive biases and the many ways in which they can influence our lives and our decisions. And it's this influence that we must learn to understand and to overcome if we're to make the most of our lives and to achieve our goals. And it's this understanding that will require a deep and nuanced exploration of the human mind and the many ways in which it can deceive us and lead us astray. And it's this exploration that will continue as we examine the many signs that we're being deceived and the ways in which we can learn to recognize and overcome these deceptions. And it's this recognition that will be the key to our success as we strive to make sense of the world around us and to make decisions that are based on reality rather than illusion. And it's this reality that we'll continue to pursue as we delve deeper into the world of cognitive biases and the many ways in which they can influence our lives and our decisions. And it's this influence that we must learn to understand and to overcome if we're to make the most of our lives and to achieve our goals. And it's this understanding that will require a deep and nuanced exploration of the human mind and the many ways in which it can deceive us and lead us astray. As we've established, cognitive biases can lead us down a path of terrible decision-making, and it's essential to recognize the signs that we're being deceived. One of the most significant indicators is our tendency to seek confirmation rather than contradiction. This is known as the confirmation bias, and it's a powerful force that can lead us to overlook crucial information and cling to our preconceived notions. Researcher Jennifer Lerner from Harvard University has shown that when we're under stress or anxious, our confirmation bias can become even more pronounced, causing us to make rash and ill-informed decisions. A great example of this is the story of Kodak, the photography giant that filed for bankruptcy in 2012. Despite being the first company to develop a digital camera, Kodak's executives were so invested in their traditional film business that they failed to see the writing on the wall. They ignored the warning signs and instead focused on confirming their own biases, which ultimately led to their downfall. This is a classic case of how our cognitive biases can lead us to make terrible decisions, even when the evidence is staring us right in the face. Another study by researcher Dan Ariely from Duke University found that when we're presented with information that challenges our biases, our brains can actually experience a kind of emotional discomfort, which he calls cognitive dissonance. This discomfort can be so intense that we'll often go to great lengths to rationalize or deny the information, rather than confronting the fact that our biases might be wrong. For instance, imagine you've always believed that a certain diet is the healthiest option, but then you come across a study that suggests the opposite. You might feel a sense of discomfort or unease, and you might even try to discredit the study or find ways to rationalize why it's wrong. This is cognitive dissonance in action, and it's a powerful force that can prevent us from making informed decisions. So, what can we do to mitigate the effects of these biases and make better decisions? The first step is to practice self-awareness. Take a step back and try to recognize when you're feeling anxious or stressed, as this can be a sign that your biases are taking over. Next, make a conscious effort to seek out diverse perspectives and contradictory information. This can be as simple as reading news articles from different sources or seeking out opinions from people with different backgrounds and experiences. By exposing ourselves to a wide range of viewpoints, we can begin to break down our biases and develop a more nuanced understanding of the world. Another practical step is to take your time when making decisions. When we're under pressure or feeling rushed, our biases can take over, leading us to make impulsive and poorly thought-out choices. By slowing down and giving ourselves time to reflect, we can reduce the influence of our biases and make more informed decisions. For example, imagine you're considering a new job offer, but you're feeling pressured to make a decision quickly. Instead of rushing into a decision, take a few days to weigh the pros and cons and seek out advice from trusted friends or mentors. This can help you make a more informed decision that's less influenced by your biases. Finally, it's essential to develop a growth mindset. When we're willing to learn and adapt, we're more likely to recognize and challenge our biases, rather than clinging to them out of fear or ego. This means being open to new ideas and experiences, and being willing to change our minds when presented with new information. By adopting a growth mindset, we can begin to break free from the limitations of our biases and develop a more flexible and adaptable approach to decision-making. For instance, imagine you've always believed that a certain skill or talent is something you're born with, but then you come across research that suggests it can be developed through practice and dedication. If you have a growth mindset, you'll be more likely to embrace this new information and start working on developing that skill, rather than clinging to your old beliefs. In real-life situations, recognizing the signs of cognitive biases can be crucial. For example, imagine you're in a meeting and someone presents an idea that you immediately disagree with. Instead of dismissing it outright, take a step back and try to understand where they're coming from. Ask questions, seek out more information, and try to see the idea from their perspective. This can help you recognize and challenge your own biases and make a more informed decision. By applying these strategies, we can begin to overcome the limitations of our cognitive biases and make more informed, rational decisions. It's not always easy, and it requires a willingness to confront our own biases and limitations. But the payoff is well worth it. By becoming more aware of our biases and taking steps to mitigate them, we can develop a more nuanced and accurate understanding of the world and make better decisions that align with our values and goals. In conclusion, cognitive biases are a natural part of the human experience, but they don't have to control our decision-making. By recognizing the signs that we're being deceived and taking practical steps to challenge our biases, we can break free from the limitations of our own minds and develop a more informed and adaptive approach to decision-making. If this helped you see yourself differently, subscribe. I post new psychology insights every single day. And if you want to go even deeper, check the link in the description for the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. It changed how millions of people think and act.